Hey everyone, it's Time Spiraled. Welcome back to some more MSEM Grand Prix. We're really lucky tonight. We have the final match in round 3 here in the MSEM Grand Prix. We've got Wendy over here on mono white Polyp pools, and Toast is running the green white green elemental circle scam deck. So it's going to be a fun match. I don't expect it's going to take too long until some of the stuff burns out here. You know the drill. We're going to mouse over some quick cards in the hands. If you've seen our previous videos, some of them should be familiar to you. Because we haven't spectated white pools in a while, I don't believe we have done it this Grand Prix. We're going to start with this deck. So we've got Aberrant Apostle here, a nice flexible piece of removal that's also stapled to a tapped white land. We've got the titular Polyp pools here in the hand. This land is a kindred land. It's shapeshifter. It has changeling, which means if a card cares about having a specific creature type and it doesn't specify that it has to be a creature, this will work. So for cards like Disciple of Faradia, which just cares about you controlling an angel, it does a lot of work. At the same time, there's just some generically good cards like Chronicles of the Kitsune, one of End of Wolency's new cards in Venerated Sanctity, and the deck's pretty much mono white, so mana shouldn't be too much of an issue here with these lovely planes. Over on Toast side of the field, we're starting off strong with a force right into our first green elemental circle. If that hangs around, which it looks likely to do so because we're not able to drop off that Apostle quite yet, we'll be able to bring out a turn 2 Vile Progenitor here. Evoked, which will also draw cards, and that should leave mana open as well for Glory of the Star, which is a flicker card, and you can see where that's going. There's also the option of going with Captured Pale Tusk, but if you've played a land, that's not what's going to be happening. So I expect that we're going to see a Vile Progenitor evoked here. When it enters, it's going to make a 3/2 colorless horror creature token. We drew a card off of Green Elemental Circle, and then Glory of the Star is going to flicker that Vile Progenitor, is going to make another colorless 3/2 horror, and then Glory of the Star is going to compose itself, and it's going to sagafy itself, and then in 3 turns, well, we're going to have, 2 essentially, we're going to have, another version of that. You can expect cards like Green Elemental Circle and Vile Progenitor to most likely get a hit, if not a small tap. Vile Progenitor most likely, as the designer of the card, most likely it's going to drop some serious toughness and maybe something else. I would expect Green Elemental Circle to not last long. This is very much a flavor of the month deck. There's quite a few players on it, and well, if you're able to rack up those wins this month for your Grand Prix standings, there's absolutely nothing wrong with figuring out that a deck is very good and playing it. So, drew a lot of lands here. Okay, so one player had asked, I believe, just there was a 1 sec here, and we undid the draw. Okay. No worries. I kind of missed what happened there, so hopefully players can figure that out. Cosmonaut Pioneer is another fantastic 5-drop. I mean, when it costs less than 5, it does a lot, because whenever it enters or leaves, you get to choose one. Either you scry 1, draw a card, get a 3/3 alien with trample, or you gain 5 life, and because it enters or leaves, a single flicker spell. Does a lot of work here. Up above, I mean, you could turn to Aberrant Apostle to, pop the Green Elemental Circle. Venerated Sanctity can also do it itself because there's no flying here. Obviously the big concern is that there's 9 power on the board, and Chronicles of the Kitsune could block one of the 3/2s, but you're not getting the Disciple of Faradia out, before 5 mana here, 4 mana, so that's in quite a few turns. So you can deal with a Green Elemental Circle, which will do some work, and Chronicles of the Kitsune can block some of what's going on here, but yeah. Players seem to be thinking, unless one of them's doing a judge call, but yeah, okay. So that is what happened. Okay, I was wondering, yeah. An extra card was drawn off of Green Elemental Circle. I believe the first card drawn was the Ancestral Glade. Let's see if we can scroll back up. Draw, puts the heart. Yeah, so that was the first draw here. And then the second draw is here. So, oh, and then there's the third. Yeah. Okay, and we're going with the plains and a venerated sanctity attack here. So, all right, let's just keep an eye on what. Well, actually, you know what? While the judge call is resolving, I mean, this game's going to be pretty much frozen for a little bit. We're going to flip over to the deck lists, and we're going to give you all of you spectators a chance to just look through. So over in Wendy's deck, we've got cards like Venerated Sanctity, which is a new card, as I said, from End of Volancy. And yes, they're adorable little whale spirits. They're 1/2 flyers. When they deal combat damage to a player, you get to put a Faith counter on it. The Faith pretty much just is like a cost reduction, because then you get to pay X and a white and sacrifice it. When you do, you can exile a non-land permanent with mana value less than or equal to X, plus the number of Faith counters on Venerated Sanctity. So the first hit pays for that first X if you're going after something with mana value 1 or 0. So it's not bad. If it gets a few hits in, it makes it very scary to try and land bigger things. We have Tal Locust Sentry here as a hate bear that picks a non-creature, non-land card type and makes all spells of that type cost 1 more. Priestess of Simplicity. I apologize if you can hear those cars in the background. Sometimes we have some really loud vehicles. Priestess of Simplicity. Players can untap more than 1 non-basic land during their untap steps. Zifang Hu, lovely promo version, makes non-creature spells cost 2 more until your next turn, and then has quite a few abilities as it ascends or transcends up the creature type pool. It looks like they're still in the middle of the judge call, so no worries there. Aberrant Apostle we've already seen. Coronary Warcaller can search for rebel permanents. Essentially, that just means you do a kicker for 0 and it puts Polyp pools right on the field. So it's the kind of ramp that you go 3 and then Disciple of Faradia becomes a 4/4 flying, also becomes an angel, can search for an angel or aura card itself, so usually finds Promised Exaltation if it hasn't already found a Polyp pool. So lots of little pieces that all work together, and it's quite nice. What else do we have here? Helena the Awakener, so that's a classic in Polyp pools. It creates a 1/1 red cleric creature token. If you already have 3 or more clerics, you get the big angel. But the big one is the -1, where you exile a creature if you control an angel, otherwise it simply is arrested. So as long as you have Polyp pools, this becomes a -1, exile a creature, and you can do it like 3 times or more if you mix and match with your +1s. Then we've got some good removal in Event Horizon. If the board goes wide enough, this hits pretty much anything. Subdue False Idols it's a 1 mana, exile a non-horror if you have a single Polyp pools, and then you can coalesce it for pretty cheap if you start getting enough horrors. Chronicles of the Kitsune is there to make a little 2/1, and then you get the choice of either having a +1/+1 flyer or legendary 4/4 white fox spirit creature. So it just does a lot and kind of mixes in well. The mana base is Polyp pools. We've got some land removal and Time-Worn Crags, a plains, and a main deck Shikai's Readout for those graveyard decks. And we have some quite similar cards here in the sideboard that are just pretty much structured to deal with quite a few things. So it looks like our players are back. We'll have a chance to look at the rest of the decks and the sideboards a little bit after. Venerated Sanctity swung, took a damage. We're on the trigger, and then we're paying white here, and then sacrificing Venerated Sanctity, I believe, to pop the green elemental circle. Which makes a lot of sense to me. You do not want more value off of that. Now the question is, I'm assuming we're going to see Chronicles of the Kitsune with the 1 mana open. That's a 2/1 that can at least trade with one of the 3/2s, and then you're only taking 6. It's not perfect, but it's decent, The interesting is I believe these saga tokens are enchantments. It's interesting that it doesn't say so. I could be incorrect. I do believe they are enchantment tokens. So, Aberrant Apostle could get rid of that. The one problem is with Vile Progenitor is that it's going to keep making these as you drop lands. And there's going to be a few. Thankfully, it's only once each turn. So you're not getting much more than that. As I said, you can decidedly bet that this card will not remain the same for the following month. So I would say get your licks in with it now in League if it's the kind of deck that interests you. I'm sure we're going to see Vile Progenitor at a decently nerfed form, and Green Elemental Circle is most likely going to get a significant hit, or at least some change. I would be surprised if nothing happens. Wendy instead, she decides that she's taking the full 9 damage. Would rather keep up this 2/1 Fox for now. Land comes in. There's another horror. Things are looking a little tight. So we're going to have a glory already next turn. We have on repeat here. So there's a little trick that you could do is fire off and on repeat. You can flicker Vile Progenitor, and then once it's on the battlefield, you can then crack a fetch land, I believe, during your opponent's turn. Yeah, so there's a lot that's going to go on here. I wouldn't be surprised if we see an early concession here and move on to another game. I don't believe there's an answer here at 3 mana that we saw in Wendy's deck. So she's got options, but if Toast remembers, it can definitely pop this Amber Hills to get another horror, and then at that point, well, you have 3 mana, so you're pretty much only playing Aberrant Apostle. That's 2 blockers. And then that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 that gets in. That seems pretty rough. Promised Exaltation is just such a cool card, but it takes forever to get up to that 5 mana here. Yeah. This is one of those, great turns where you have the Green Elemental Circle in hand, you have the Vile Progenitor, you've got the 1 mana Flicker spell, and Green Elemental Circle wasn't removed turn 1, which again is totally valid. I mean, it's a lot to ask players to have turn 1 interaction against a enchantment, but also to deal with the opponent's hand. Of course, a deck with perhaps hand attack or, a taxing counterspell or a cheap counterspell could have sabotaged that entire play. I mean, if we'd lost Vile Progenitor, the Pale Tusk is still good, not as absolutely absurd, but, All right, so Aberrant Apostle's coming out. That's 2 blockers. Let's see what happens here. I have a feeling we're gonna see because here's a yeah, okay, yeah. So cracking the Amber Hill is gonna get another one. Glory is gonna fire, like, you could fire off Glory. You don't actually need to, I believe. It's you may cast the copy. Yeah, we've got 12 unblocked here damage, so I mean I would just swing. Technically there should be a saga trigger here, but I wouldn't use it. You have lethal on board here. If you flicker your Vile Progenitor, you no longer do. Okay. So yeah, flickering Vile Progenitor would not have been the correct decision here. So, all right, that's game 1. Players are going to move over to game 2. So what we're going to do is we are going to quickly shift back over, look at the sideboards. In this deck, what do we have? We've got Pious Wardens, which can exile creatures, but at 3 mana, it's quite expensive. I assume we're going to see out-of-body experience, 100%. Exiling a creature, they get a 1/1 is not perfect in a deck that still wants a bunch of bodies, but, it is what it is. I don't think anything else really helps here. The opponent runs basics. I don't think Priestess of Simplicity is what you want. Zifeng Hu is maybe a little slow. I think the out-of-bodies are just the best option. And then on Toast side, the opponent's running Polyp pools and not really enchantments, just mostly creatures. I guess you have Event Horizons. You could have Vivian if you want to go more for a value base, but I mean, your deck's already doing really well. It doesn't fold hard to what's going on the opponent's side of the field, so not a lot of counter spells. I mean, if they're banking on hitting your instants and enchantments by making them cost less, yeah, I don't know. Not really in artifacts and enchantments and going on here. It's obviously if you had a way to deal with Polyp pools, but I mean, we don't really have one, so One of our players is ready to start. I mean, it could just be Event Horizons, Vivians, right? Your creatures deal damage and you just get rid of the stuff that's a problem. But like, do you really need to? I don't know. I don't really think so. Like you're doing, I think this deck just lines up decently well against the opponent. So we're gonna do a quick swap back to our gameplay. Our player should be starting soon. I'll be back in just a second. And there we go. All right, let's check opening hands. Maybe something in those hands coming in from the sideboard. Oh, looks like we're gonna... Okay. Pious Warden actually did come in. Okay. So 3 mana. Yeah, 3 mana exile a creature, I guess, and an enchantment. Maybe that's just enough. Getting to 3 mana though is kind of rough. And here we have the Event Horizons. Yeah, we've already got Amorphous Tyrant here for stuff, so yeah, I'm a little surprised that Pious Warden is coming in. I feel maybe just saying, hey, I need to get to 3 mana before. I mean, we did get to 3 mana on the last game, so maybe a 3 mana Pious Warden getting rid of the Vile Progenitor would have been enough, but I mean the board was already so big at the point, so. Alright. Wendy's gonna start. I would most likely imagine we're going to see a Plains followed by a Venerated Sanctity again. That feels like a good turn 1 play. What's nice about being on the play is that you can already have this online and chip in and get rid of an early Green Elemental. Also, it hits non-land permanents, so it can also get rid of cards like Mana Ascetic, which is our Flightless Birds of Paradise. So we're kind of seeing like a very different start here. We don't have the absurdity that is an early Vile Progenitor, so it's going to be quite a different match. Nebula of Empty Gold here, lovely fixing land, as long as you're willing to always pay that life. It can fix anywhere from 2 to 5 colors. Mana Ascetic is decent, so you've got 2 mana to play next turn, which is good because you could do an Amorphous Tyrant just to have a 6/5 Reach Vigilance, but that's the kind of play that's not going to work so well against Subdue False Idols and Pious Warden. Oh, actually, never mind. The one interesting thing, and obviously it hasn't really come up very often, is Subdue False Idols can only exile non-horror creatures. These are horrors. Not this one, not Scion of Flourishing, but Amorphous Tyrant and Vile Progenitor are horrors. Until Midnight, they represent kind of the equivalent of the Mythos, for those of you who know like Arkham Horror. So horrors were very much in flavor. So we're tapping a Plains that's going to be a Subdue False Idols. It's just going to exile the Mana Ascetic and put Toast back a turn, I would imagine. I'm sure it has other options for what it wants to do. Turn 2 is maybe not great. I mean, you're not going to just on repeat. You have an Event Horizon if you need to use it. This thing is a 1 mana. And then, yeah, but not getting up to 3 is quite relevant because that's the on repeat Amorphous Tyrant. But, wow. Green Elemental Circle off the top. Thankfully, Venerated Sanctity is already there, so that could already deal with Green Elemental Circle. Let me see. If we pay... So even if we run out Green Elemental Circle here, we're not doing anything crazy this turn, but we would be able to do Amorphous Tyrant the following turn as just a 6/5. What's really cool about on repeat is it might be a 2 mana flicker, and then normally you're like, well, the 1 mana ones are really the good ones, but this technically has retrace. You can cast it from your graveyard anytime. You could cast a sorcery by discarding a land card in addition to paying its other costs. So drawing into another Subdue False Idols. I mean, if that Sign of Flourishing lands, you're going to be happy to have it. Pious Warden's probably what you want for the Amorphous Tyrant. Promise Exaltation here is nice. really nothing was really played out last turn, and decided, and I mean totally valid, to not just run out dry a green elemental circle with no follow-up, because you know that your opponent is now packing a lot of potential removal. So going up to 3, you could decide on Pious Warden just for the gain 5 life. I think that would be incorrect. I think the fact that this is your one answer to Green Elemental Circle, because these do not hit non-creatures, probably means you want to keep it. And you're happy, I guess, just growing the Venerated Sanctity. It's up to 2 now, so it's going to be able to start hitting some bigger things. What I'm curious is... Yeah, okay, we're going to see the Event Horizon come out. All right. Makes total sense. Was worth holding on to the Event Horizon in case something else was played that needed to get removed, but there it is. So it exiles non-land permanents if their mana value is less than or equal to the greatest number of non-land permanents controlled by a single player. So if you're going super wide, this will hit anything. If your opponent is going super wide, this will hit anything. And often, because of just the 1 and 2 plays, it will hit things at mana value 1 or 2. It's a little harder to use Event Horizon to take out these really big threats. I would say that the Reanimator decks or the Super Ramp decks play in, the ones that are like 7 mana. That's a little harder to hit unless they're coming with a huge board. All right, is going to play... Okay, it played a tapped Amber Hill, so regained that life instead of paying it. So on repeat can only exile stuff you control, so that's not going to happen. Amorphous doesn't have flash, so we're kind of F6 here on Tosa's turn. We got up to 4 mana up here for Wendy, which is actually not irrelevant. We're 1 away from Promised Exaltation. I mean, if we're slow rolling to the point where we're baiting out an early Pious Warden, it definitely could be a thing. Nope. Looks like Wendy's playing it safe. She says, no, I really got to keep this cards for dealing with your stuff. You know, if you're slow rolling, tap lands on 2, and I'm just slowly going up, I'm very happy holding on to these. Glory of the Star is back. Absolutely love the artwork on this card. I think it just pops. So we're going to crack the Amber Hills. We're going to go and get... Oh, yeah, I really approve of that. I love Ancestral Glade. Paying the 1 life for it, though, so it enters untapped. It also fixes your basic lands. So now the plains can tap for green. So running out Green Elemental Circle. Paying the 1, we're going to cast Amorphous Tyrant. So it evokes. Obviously, it's not going to do anything on the evoke, except for drawing a card, which isn't nothing, right? You just turn into a green mana cantrip, and now Glory of the Star is going to flicker the Amorphous Tyrant. You're going to get to keep it around. So you're going to have a 6/5 reach Vigilance, which is actually kind of fine. I mean, the one concern is, again, it's a horror, so Subdue False Idols is not going to work against it. Your Pious Warden can either take care of the Green Elemental Circle, or can eat the Amorphous Tyrant if that's what you choose to play this turn. Well, of course, we'll see what the draw ends up being. If it's a... Okay, so it's a Priestess of Simplicity. Forces players to can't untap more than 1 non-basic land during their untap step. That means Toast would have to keep 1 of their lands locked down. But yeah, that Amorphous Tyrant is a 6/5 reach Vigilance. I mean, it can trade with a Promise Exaltation, but the problem you might see is if Promise Exaltation attacks alone, you get to put 2 counters on it, or exile a creature with power less than it, or a creature gains first strike and lifelink until end of turn. So, I mean, it can block for a turn. It won't deal with it, though. Either you're going to get a 7/7 or a first strike lifelink. Unfortunately, that's not going to work. I imagine Toast is just going to mention that, hey, Amorphous Tyrant is a horror. Oh, hold up. Okay. Yeah, okay. They saw it. Unfortunately, Wendy hadn't seen it. So yeah, the reason it does that is because, there's all these coalesce cards that are horrors, so it's kind of flavorful for it not to exile cards that are in its sort of like typal pool here. So that is not a legal target. So um, I wonder, are we going to see a judge call, or are they going to roll it back? Yeah, it's the kind of thing that doesn't come up very often. Are we just leaving it go, or okay? Well, Pious Warden is going to go for it then. I'm just going to remind them. Yeah, that should be a judge call. You've pointed removal at something that is not able to be targeted. So, but the Cajun's around, so we have judges that are around right now, and unfortunate that we have to do some judge calls here in this match more than once, but it's important that we keep track of these kind of plays. So just in case the judge says, hey, you roll back that, it's a warning for something, but I mean, it might make the difference between having the subdue in hand or not. So I'll let them run out the judge call, and then we'll catch back up with the match. What we can do now is switch back over again to the deck lists, and while they resolve that, we can look at the other cards that are in the deck. So as we said, we have some early mana. We've got 4 mana ascetics, 2 Runebound Disciples, which are interesting because they sort of work like mana ascetics, but they fix all the mana that you have, and you can spend it as a mana of any color for things that have mana value 5 or greater, or to activate abilities of things that are mana value 5 or greater, so pretty cool. Duchess Odelia the 7th can search for non-land permanence card with mana value 1 or less, so it can fetch your mana dorks, or it can fetch Green Elemental Circle. It cannot fetch Glory of the Star or Across the Planar Void, as I made that mistake in a previous video. So yeah, it's not up to me to do it. Unfortunately, I'm gonna let. I'm not the one to. All right, they're handling it. We've already seen Cosmonaut Pioneer. Love this little card. It just does a lot, but it is a 5 mana 3/3 on the base. It's usually good to have it be the 6/6 mode, and then when it leaves, you get whichever one. Vile Progenitor, the big one of the boogeymen of the format right now, between this and like Phoenixes. I think this one's kind of just a little gross. It ended up overtuned to the way I expected it. The evoke mode just simply does too much. So as I said, this little fella is going to see some change. Amorphous Tyrant, I think, is the one that really hit the sweet spot. I mean, if you scam it out, you really don't have much to do with like your mana dorks. Like, these aren't going to fight anything. So just having a 6/5 reach vigilance is decently fair. So not too upset with that. Sign of Flourishing, using the lovely cube art version of it. It's a 5 mana 5/5 trampler. When it enters, you put a counter on each other creature you control, and they gain trample until end of turn. And then whenever a forest you control enters, you get to Aetherize it. So Aetherize just means create a token that's a copy of this thing, then exile it. So it's a way of flickering without actually having the creature leave the battlefield. So it doesn't dodge removal, but doesn't gain summoning sickness. So there's, pretty much that. Cantrip of Old Magic is really interesting. So it's a 4/3 for 5, but you might notice it has Inspirit. Inspirit means you're pretty much never casting this for 5 mana, because as you cast it, you get to exile a non-enchantment creature you control until it leaves the battlefield or fails to resolve, and it reduces the spell's cost by the exiled card's mana value, a little bit like Offering. So if you've got one of your 5-drops that you've scammed onto the field, this costs green, and you just get a 4/3. The scam card is now exiled, and then when Cantrip leaves, you get it back. And when it enters, you get to bring back any card from your graveyard to your hand. So that could be a flicker, that could be anything you need. Captured Pale Tusk has actually been super interesting. So I hadn't even realized, how fun this was before I recorded some of my other matches. So it's only a 4/5 Dino Beast for 6, but Primal is where it's really interesting. So if you play it for white, and you can't do that unless you haven't played a land this turn, when it enters, you're going to search for a basic plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle, and you'll gain 2 life. but you'll sacrifice it if it was cast for its primal cost. But if you flicker it, you don't sacrifice it because it was not cast for its primal cost, and you'll end up ramping 2 basic planes and gaining 4 life, which leads into being, easier for it's a little easier for the deck to then get to other big stuff without having to scam. Getting to the scam pieces, Glory of the Star is a flicker that then composes itself, so you get it back. There's one on the field on the last match, so you've seen that one. Across the Planar Void is the other one. It exiles, brings it back. But if you have extra mana, it can come back with counters, whether it's +1/+1, flying, first strike, lifelink, or vigilance. You can make your creatures quite interesting, and I'm quite happy with where this card ended up. It used to be quite different, and it was very clunky and kind of like blah. So I'm happy that I was actually, funnily enough, it was good that Toll Midnight was rejected the first time, but had enough votes that people showed that they liked it, because I was really enticed to like rework some stuff. And the rework for Across the Planar Void, I like it a lot, including the name. So on repeat, you've already seen, it's the flicker that keeps flickering. Green Elemental Circle, you've already seen. So that pretty much wraps it all up. All right, so Windy, our head judge, is still dealing with the situation. I'm just going to let them know that there's, no worries. When we play the Grand Prix, we just have to... Yeah, okay. So, for example, I can't show you the Discord because there's a lot of like private information sometimes, but it's important that we do just a judge call to ensure that the way things happen correctly. So, for example, Wendy seemed to decide that it resolved with no target, so it would go to the graveyard, but Wendy says that's not really how that works, so Wendy's going to make a call. Either there's going to be a rollback or something else. It's just always a good idea to check in with the judges when you're playing in the Grand Prix at that level. I don't want people to be too put off by it. It's still casual in the sense that we'll call a judge, Wendy or Cajun or whoever's around, Pipsqueak will guide you through with the correct steps to do it. It's just we need people to just be mindful with rules and stuff, because even though there's not really any prizes beyond, promotional cards and stuff, it's important that players learn this sort of thing, I would say. And yeah, so you won't find any money situations lying around, So yeah, so we're going to rewind the creature cast and the removal, and then there's just a warning, which is what I expected. So I was to say, just letting one know that doesn't need to concede, things happen. We just rewind the removal cast, so it'll end up back in the hand, which is, a better place than in the graveyard. So there we go. That should mean our players are ready to proceed playing, so we're going to switch back on. All right, I'm happy that we can now do that little switch over to the deck list whenever little things happen, because it means we're not just staring at a blank screen. Maybe one day I'll get an editing program. We can start doing some editing on the matches, but in the meantime, it's just a lot easier for me just to do this sort of quick stream, record, publish, just because of the way life situation and work and time commitments are. But one day we'll get to editing, but in the meantime, it's nice that I have some options to keep the conversation going, so there's not too many empty empty spots. So speaking of Vivian, there's Vivian, came in, I believe, from the sideboard. I don't believe there was any copies in the main board, so that came in. Not too surprising. So Vivian's kit, we can talk about a little bit while Wendy finishes rewinding the turn. Probably going to run out, I believe. Just the Pious Warden would be what I would do. So yeah, I'm assuming that's where it's going to happen. It's going to be probably exile a creature, is what I would assume. Because there's no other... I mean... If you get a land next turn, okay, so we're going with the Elemental Circle. That's also totally valid. It means that next turn you're hoping to get that 5th land to get Exaltation. there's some things we can do. We're going to be taking some beatings from this Amorphous Tyrant, though, in the meantime. So, pardon me. What I was saying about Vivian is really lovely kit, and I've talked about it in a previous video. The +1 seems innocuous. Mill 4 cards, bring back a creature card, mill this way to your hand, but it's a draw that also reads you can activate a different loyalty ability. So you'll always get up 1 loyalty and up 1 card, pretty much almost always. And then the other abilities, as you can read, is you get a green cat creature, cat spirit creature token. When it dies, you gain life. -3 is a removal, and then -9 is, you know, a bunch of 4/4 green Hydra creature tokens, and then everything gains trample and haste. So this does not have trample and haste, but it does have reach and vigilance. So swings in for 6, but yeah. So without Green Elemental Circle, we didn't get to 5 for a Scion, a Flourishing, or a Vivian, which is, you know, totally valid. It's actually an interesting draw here in Time-Worn Crags. Your opponent's got 3 non-basic lands, so Time-Worn Crags will only cost 1 and a tap to activate if you want to take out one of their lands and really put them on the back foot. I wonder, though, if that's worth it here. Of course, you know, Toast draws into the 5th land. It's going to be able to play out the Scion, the Vivian, and start getting a lot of value. I would imagine... I actually don't know which one you play out first. You know that there's Subdue False Idols in hand. I'm imagining you don't run out Scion the Flourishing. I think Vivian the Sagittar would make more sense. Start accruing that value, and then you can use the -3 if you have to. So the question here will be, are we running out Promised Exaltation to start giving kind of a threat, because the Amorphous Tyrant could attack and either trade, or if she's willing to take another 6 points of damage, or maybe block with Pious Warden, Promised Exaltation can start swinging in as a really big creature, and becoming First Strike lifelink means you're kind of regaining that life. So we'll see. There's definitely still plays to be made. There could be, you know, a Time-Worn Crags activation. I feel it'd be kind of rough to drop off of 5th mana. You just got to your Promised Exaltation. I mean, you'd eventually want to be able to cast out the other subdues. And there's a reason why it's up to 1, because if you don't have a target, you do want to be able to just cash them in for 7/9s. But, yeah. Okay. Interesting. So we're going with Priestess of Simplicity, which is fair. Toast has 3 non-basics, so if Toast uses them, only 1 will be untapped on the following turn. And I'm guessing Time-Worn Crags is, yeah, so it's still an instant speed ability, so you can always use it if you really have to. Very interesting stuff. Let's just see what the sequencing is. So we're at main phase 2. You're not attacking with Pious Warden, that's for sure. So passing over the turn. Toast has nothing at instant speed here, I think, that you would play. On repeat, it's not what's going to happen here. Oh, so the second Amorphous Tyrant is really good, actually. You could evoke it, on repeat it, and then, because you would have 1 enter the battlefield, a second enter the battlefield, the Amorphous Tyrant could punch both. So that's definitely something you could do here. And of course, you can get your licks in with your first Amorphous Tyrant first. There's only 4 power on board here, and I believe none of it is First Strike. So do you chump block with the Pious? I am assuming you wanted to keep the Priestess of Simplicity up. Even though it's the smaller body, it's the one that's probably putting the most amount of effect into Toast's deck right now. Yep. Takes a big chunk of 6. It's some real stuff here, but it is what it is. So yeah, we didn't get to the 5th land, but we did get to Amorphous Tyrant on repeat, which is going to be pretty good here. As I said, definitely not as explosive as the Vile Progenitor Scan, but Amorphous Tyrant is a scary card, so I would assume this is what we're going to see. It's going to be Amorphous Tyrant. We're evoking. First Amorphous Tyrant is going to punch. I would assume you want to take out Priestess of Simplicity first, and then your on repeat is going to hit the Pious Warden. I mean, for me, it makes sense to clear the board and just have lethal damage on turn. So, what? Why did they... Hold up. I mean, that would have been my target too, but no target was picked. So, okay, well, Tyrant kills Priestess. Okay. And then we're going with on repeat. Tyrant's going to come back. Other Tyrant is going to punch the Pious Warden. So we've got 2/6/5s. There's a Time Worn Crags that could activate here, but I mean, you can't. You've got to leave the 5 mana for Promised Exaltation, right? That's the only way you're surviving next turn. Clears one of the Tyrants, but I mean, we're really on the back foot here. The fact that Subdue False Idols cannot hit Amorphous Tyrant is such a big blow. Chronicles, a little late here. Yeah, it's not looking good. I mean, I think the only thing to do this turn is run out Exaltation as a 5/5 flyer. You block one of the Amorphous Tyrants, taking 6, going to 2, and then... Man, not even, because you have on repeat in hand as an instant speed, right? So what's actually going to happen is, like, we're going to go for combat, and then the one that's being blocked is going to get flickered, and then that's going to punch Promised Exaltation. And they don't have trample, but you're not going to lose any of them. You even have Glory. Never mind. You got Glory of the Star too. You can even do it for 1 cheaper. Wow. All right. Big value. I think that's what I would do, yeah. I would just swing in... Oh, okay, we're doing it main? Okay, totally fine. We're flickering this Amorphous Tyrant and punching and then swinging for 6. It's the same. It's the same. And we know there's unfortunately not much in Wendy's hand that she can do to stop this. We're up to what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7 with Polyp pools. So your Subdue that's in the graveyard here, we're a little close, so we're not able to cast it yet. 5, 6. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're 1 mana, I believe, off from Subdue False Idols. 7, 9 would be fine, but I mean, it's a little too late now, right? Because you've got the 2 creatures. 6 mana means... I mean, you can Chronicles of the Kitsune, and then you can pay 5 for Act 2 Descent and getting a 4/4, which is a sticky 4/4. Yeah, so I guess that's really it. The thing is we've got the mana open here for an on-repeat, right? So the Amorphous Tyrant's going to punch the Huli, and then next turn we've got lethal there. So, oh, okay, didn't go for it. Okay. Don't worry about it. Mistakes are a dime a dozen. People make a lot of them, and I'm happy that we were able to resolve it correctly with our judge calls. So thanks a lot for stopping by for this match. I hope you have a great one. And make sure you check out the other Grand Prix videos. We have a lot of content creators putting out a lot of stuff. Have a good one, and see you in the next video.